everybody. Randy Patterson here with Boomerocity. And I know, I always tell you that I've got another super special interview. But have I lied to you yet? Well, guess what? I've got another super special interview for you. And I'm not lying this time either. My guest is someone who's been at the heart of the entertainment world for over 5 decades. He's a seasoned producer, a sharp industry mind, meaning the music industry. And as it turns out, he's a longtime friend of the one and only Billy Joel. And I don't know about you, but I am a huge fan of Billy Joel, and I have been since the 70s. Oh, and that friend, I'm talking about Steve Cohen, and he's the executive producer behind the brand new documentary that everyone's buzzing about. It's on HBO, and it's entitled Billy Joel, and So It Goes. This film takes a deep personal dive into the life and legacy of the Piano Man, and today Steve is going to pull back the curtains to give us some behind-the-scenes insight into how it all came together. And it's a fascinating story. And there are some very big names tied into that, and not just Billy's. I don't want to ruin the surprise, but there's some pretty cool people on this thing. A couple of apologies, though. First of all, there was a technical error on my end, and this seems to be my week of technical errors. I've had glitches with Zoom that I wish they would fix, and because they're so intermittent. But this time the fault was mine, and I didn't realize that the little cable on my official podcast microphone had disconnected from it. And so the sound on my end is terrible. I'll admit it. It's tin canish because it was the microphone on my computer, and I didn't notice it until after the interview was done. So my apologies for the really crappy sound of my voice, which it doesn't sound good with the best of setups. So my apologies there. But the interview is fun. I think you're going to really like it. I think you should, if you're not already an HBO subscriber, sign up, because the first part of the documentary is on July 18th, which, as I'm recording this, is just a couple of days away. And then part 2 is on July 25th. After that, it'll be on demand. But if you're like me, you want to see it as soon as it comes out. And believe me, I got the advanced view of it. And as a Billy Joel fan, I learned a lot that I didn't already know. And I mean a lot. And there are parts that will bring you to tears and parts that will absolutely blow your mind. And I mean that, no hyperbole here. So sit back, turn up the volume, get your favorite drink. Mine was a nice LaCroix water, and enjoy this Boomerocity exclusive with Steve Cohen. Until next time, this is Randy Patterson with Boomerocity. Take care. I always do virtual backgrounds with whoever I interview, because it's about who I'm talking to. It's not about me, because if you guys like you don't show up, nobody cares what I have to say.
I doubt that's the case. But I'll tell you, it's pretty interesting, because that photograph, that's the key art, is a photograph that was taken by Billy's first drummer, Reese Clark, that we found in the archives. And it was really interesting because, like, out of all of the press photos and publicity photos and millions of photos that we, combed through, this is a real moment in time. They were on the road in, I think, in upstate New York, doing Cold Spring Harbor, the first tour for the first record. So it's kind of like, and we all, it's interesting about this stuff. You end up getting a little pushback because people have their own opinions on what the imagery should be. But being with Billy for, all of those decades, like this is right back at the beginning. So I'm very glad they chose it. And I think it's pretty stunning, actually.
I think it's very, very good. And I was telling Samantha before you jumped on that, I've been a Billy Joel fan from almost the beginning.
Right.
And, I'm a boomer. I'm about to turn 66. I saw Billy at the ASU Activity Center during the Nylon Curtain Tour. And after I
Phoenix,
launched
right? Is that in
Boomerocity,
Phoenix? Is
yeah,
that in
yeah,
Phoenix? Yeah.
Tempe, technically
Tempe.
Tempe, but yeah, Phoenix. So,
I was there.
and a great show, and the video that came out from that same tour, I've looked once and I couldn't find anything. I need to look again, but I wish that show from that tour would be put out on DVD because I love that concert. I saw it on, I guess it was Showtime or HBO not long after that tour, and I've seen segments of it on, I guess, YouTube or something. But I'd love to have the DVD right in my own personal library so I
Well,
can.
I'll tell you, it's actually the Live from Long Island,
Mhm.
the concert that we did at Nassau Coliseum was from that tour. That was the Nylon Curtain tour because we did Scandinavian Skies, we did Goodnight Saigon. So that
Okay.
was the tour. And in fact, the stage set was sort of a factory riveted metal kind of distressed
Because of Allentown type
because of
thing.
Allentown, there were multiple
Yeah.
pianos. That was the first tour we took, four multiple pianos on stage. So yeah, so
Wow.
that is the tour. That's basically
Oh,
what.
okay. Well, I'll pull that then or
I don't
order
think we did
that.
every.
But
I'm sure we didn't do every song from the album because we never did that. We would just pick, a half a dozen
right.
songs.
Yeah.
But that is circa Nylon Curtain for sure.
Wow. Very cool. I'll order that then. But I tell you, as I was telling Samantha though, people think I know everything about music because of what I do, and I just tell them the internet's a wonderful thing, right? Some things I've got almost like an idiot savant type of memory on, and my friends just call me idiot, but really, there was just a lot that I thought I knew that I didn't, and I was blown away. So because I got to get, Samantha provided a link to be able to watch this ahead of time, and I was like, oh my gosh, I've been hyping it on my personal Facebook network because I know there's a lot of Billy fans on in my orbit, and I mean, my hat's off to you, Steve. You guys did a phenomenal job. It wasn't a mailed in type of thing. And there's so many things that struck me about it. I mean, you guys didn't dodge the hard stuff.
Mm-mm.
You took it warts and all. And I'm not afraid to name names on this one, but I remember going to see the David Bowie movie that came out, what, 2 or 3 years ago, put
Right.
out by the estate, and I forget the name of it. I should have wrote it down. And I'm friends with
That
Angela.
Moon Age Daydream.
That's it. That's
Yeah.
it. And I'm friends with Angela Bowie. She, nicely, she had a lot to do with David's early image and, contributed to that whole rise of his stardom and all that. And I'm not exaggerating on this, Steve. They showed a glimpse of her in a photo for, I'm not exaggerating, 3 seconds.
Mhm.
2 hours of a movie, a lot of from that era, but she only got 3 seconds. And when you guys did what you did with this movie and pulling in the ex-wives and all that, I thought, boy, that's treading some dangerous territory, maybe. So I just thought it was phenomenal how you guys pieced it together. It's very tastefully done, even on the hard stuff. And you pulled in some great people. I interviewed Mark Rivera early in the Boomerocity life, and I'd love to talk to him again. But I just seeing familiar faces and just hearing everybody talking, seeing Billy be what appeared to me to be very vulnerable and transparent. So
Well,
my hat's off to you.
thank you, and that's the best review we could get. I think part of the problem with celebrity documentaries and musician documentaries so often is that they are basically 2 3 hour infomercials for catalog, and in this world where where everyone wants to control the narrative, it's understandable. But Billy, when we set out to do this, he said that he didn't want to tell his story. He's tired of talking about himself, which is so Billy Joel. And he also, said very much, look, my life is in my music, And that's all I have to say about that. And if somebody wants to dive in and tell my story, my hat's off to them. But it doesn't interest me to do it. And throughout a long process of fits and starts, a couple of different directors, a couple of different projects that might have happened and didn't happen because of timing or whatever, how we landed with Susan Lacey and Jessica Levin was sort of fortuitous, and sort of the gods were conspiring. Susan and I met a couple of years before it was even an idea, and I thought that if we were ever going to do this, I wanted to introduce the two of them. They have similar interests in classical music. Their personal family history they share, being descendants of Holocaust survivors. So they had a great deal in common. And one of the things about Susan was that she's told these stories very reverently. An American Masters for 30 years. She's really the preeminent artist documentarian, because she respects the work. And I knew that the tabloid aspect of Billy's life would not be, her focus. So when the decision was made to do this, she made it really clear to him, and she made it really clear to me that if she was going to do this, it needed to be an independent story. My role as executive producer, and having been with Billy for, 5 decades, can you believe that?
Do you think it's going to work out?
Maybe, I think maybe we like each other, but my role was to assist them in going down avenues that might not have been readily apparent in research. And because I lived a lot of these events, I was there when they happened. I tell this story a lot, that when Billy was recording and writing, there was, the band and us guys, we were a family, and, he would finish a song and put his handwritten lyric sheet in front of you and play the tape, to see what everybody thought about it. So, many of these songs, I heard them before they were finished or before they were recorded. So I remember the times, and I thought that my role in assisting them finding the context for a lot of this stuff was really, going to make this film important. So, and more importantly, make it truthful, which was all Billy cared about. Was he said, "Look, I don't give a shit how you tell it, just as long as you tell the truth." And the other part, which was a very conscious effort, and we talked about this, was, without editorial control, Bill, they were going to do, sorry about that. Without editorial control, they were going to, I hope we can cut this. Without editorial control, they were going to leave whatever in they felt was pertinent to telling the story. And you got no say in it. And he was like, as long as they're honest, it is what it is. I lived my life. So I think that's what makes your reaction to the documentary so resonant, because it is that. It is not, look, he sat down for interviews. Anybody who watches this is going to think he participated simply because he was in the movie. But also when you watch this film and see how deep he went and how much it's warts and all, most people don't like to parade those things about their lives, and they don't like to talk. So I think the honesty of it, and sort of opening up the hood behind the meanings of the songs and the motivations and inspirations for the songs, I think that's for a Billy Joel fan, is going to be a real unique, second listen. Like, you're going to listen to these songs again, and you kind of thought you knew what they were about, and now that you know what they're about, you hear them a little differently. I've had people tell me that they're listening to the Billy Joel channel on Sirius, which is on this month, hearing these songs seemingly for the first time because it's the context of the documentary. And, that's a win. That's a win-win for Billy fans and for his body of work.
Yep. Well, I mean, silly me. I never delved that much into his background as a fan, because I was really just kind of focusing on the music. I didn't realize he was Jewish until watching this documentary. And I was stunned by the family background, having to leave Germany as Nazism rose, and his grandfather had to sell the plant, and what that plant ultimately was manufacturing after the change of, I mean, it literally, Steve, put chills. I mean, goosebumps on my arms. I mean, it was, I mean, I'm a pro, I'm not going to be ashamed of it. I'm pro Israel. I'm not Jewish, but I'm pro Israel, and, very sympathetic to the history
Yep.
of Jews throughout all time, and hearing that, you could just, and as he told that story, you could see the pain on his face.
Yeah.
I mean, was it painful to,
Well, I mean, listen,
was he,
it's a story he's processed, over decades. But I think for me, I'm a great student of history as well. I'm passionate about, that period of time in history. I'm Jewish, so I inherited, that legacy. And I think that intergenerational trauma from that period of time is a real thing. And I think as it relates to a songwriter who writes songs that are personal, that are based on life experiences and emotions and relationships with people, I think all of that is of a piece. And I think all of that, feeds into the depth of that material. And I think, it's been interesting for me knowing the story, knowing his history, but even though you know it, when you see it in front of you and you're watching it, with all of that archival footage, and
Mhm.
talking to his brother, it becomes real and it becomes tangible. I think the whole thing about Vienna, which is something he'd sort of been deflecting for a very long time, that it is a song about what it really is, which is slow down, like stop and smell the roses, and and
Mhm.
and live a life present and in the present. But at the end of the day, he was searching for a deeper meaning of his history, and Vienna became the city that his father ended up in, and it's no coincidence that that's the name of that song, and that is, we have that piece in the film where he dedicates it to his father. So,
Yeah.
as painful as these memories are, he felt comfortable enough to let us in on that stuff, which I think is very brave and very courageous, of anyone, let alone a guy who doesn't really have to do this. I mean,
Right.
there was no necessity for him to tell this story in this way. So it's a
Yeah.
gift.
Well, again, makes a person very vulnerable to put that out there. And I was reminded of, well, another famous Jewish rock star, and that's Gene Simmons. I mean, same, very similar story there. Father leaves, has a second family out there, and Gene gets to meet all that. Or Elton John, and his dad and that whole thing. So, obviously it creates wounds and perhaps a wellspring of creativity to be able to deal with that pain and to be able to articulate it. And I think in all three cases, those gentlemen have done a phenomenal job of channeling that in a very good, creative, and prosperous way.
Yeah.
Did did with the fact that Billy backed out of the book deal, which was mentioned about in the film, did that did that factor into how this documentary, what went into the documentary or how it was put together?
No, I think that story is sort of a little bit of a red herring here, because the autobiography came out, Fred Schroer's autobiography, which is really sort of the closest thing to his voice. And I think what ended up happening when he was making that book, at least my observation of it, was as he got further down the line, he didn't like these stories coming from him in first person, because it
Yeah,
became too much of explanation of the creative process. And there's an element in Billy's DNA, which is to sort of not poke the bear, like let these things exist without too much examination, because they're delicate, and um, they're ephemeral. And if you get into it and you start really digging into it, like he's got this feeling that it might just all dissipate. I have the same feeling. It's like, don't look at it too hard. Just put your head down, tell your stories, and don't get too heavy into the how of it all. Like let it emerge. And I think for creative people, I think we have to let it as a sort of a energy flow as opposed to we're not accountants, we we need to let this stuff sort of live in the ether. And I think, when you write songs as cinematic and observational with real people, a very uh, bereft of metaphor. They're kind of like how we talk and how we think. Beautiful phrases, but I think that is as close as he gets to telling, to doing these things as diary entries. But I think the book, part of that manuscript was Susan's inspiration for a lot of the dialogue that eventually Billy sort of parroted. I mean, she got a copy of that. There's only one or two copies laying around, and as executive producer, I had one of those copies, and I felt, I wasn't intruding on Billy by sharing it with her, because I thought that it's one of those things that showed her the inner workings from his voice. And since she wanted to make a movie that was, archive, leaning very heavily on archives, but really having Billy talk about his feelings about those things from his vantage point of today, I felt that was pertinent. I don't know if Billy's mad at me for doing it. I don't said anything,
You
but
might find out soon enough, like tomorrow or something, huh?
no, I mean, listen, he'll watch this podcast and go, "I did, you did, fuck you," like it's not, but I think
I hope he watches this. So,
well, listen, I think we're all too old to worry about it anymore. But
yeah.
I mean, I think this long relationship and friendship with him is based on trust and respect, and he has trusted me, and I've respected him, and I think he respects me. So we tried to make, he's always in search of excellence, and if any of the information that I was able to guide them to observe and feather into the film um, propelled the story as it related to music, I think he's fine with all of that. I hope.
What were the biggest challenges in putting this documentary together?
Oh, I think the biggest challenge was the first hurdle was getting Elizabeth Weber on board to participate. She, after they broke up, after they divorced, after she stopped managing him, I like to say she went into the witness protection program because no one ever heard from her. Um, she distanced herself. There are people in her life that didn't even know that she was married to him or managed him. I
Wow.
made friends with her. Billy stayed in contact with her, but it was always like, you guys enjoy this. I don't have anything to do with it. And I think she was improperly maligned over the years. One, because she was a strong woman in a man's world, and two, because people love to tell stories in the absence of counter argument. And I felt that this was an opportunity to celebrate her participation in this incredible career and to talk about the stuff that was very personal, because she was the muse for so many years. There were so many songs that she's a verse, she's a chorus, or she's an entire song. So that was a challenge. And I wrote her, and I knew that Susan Lacey and Jessica Levin, because they were women in the industry, were going to engender some confidence and comfort for her. So that was a challenge, and it ended up successfully. Part one is all about her and all about that relationship, among other things. And I think it tells a story that no one's ever heard. The other part is just the logistics of, as the story develops, you then go, hey, it'd be really nice to get this one to talk about it, or it'd be really nice to try and figure out how we can do that. And I think my job, navigating Billy's availability for interviews, and doing the nuts and bolts producing on getting all of these interviews lined up so that Susan could do her magic, that was challenging. And the archives were unbelievably challenging because Billy's archives were never organized. They're now getting organized because this film has sort of, kicked us all in the butt about, how much there is out there and how much we never knew was out there. So that was very challenging, finding this stuff and then finding the best copies of this stuff and then making the right choices. There's 10 performances of Stiletto, which is the best one you want to use visually and audio and orally. So I think those were the three challenges, the three biggest challenges. Um, I think the overview for me is, I lived this life. So staying independent and staying objective as much as I possibly could when I would see bits and pieces and cuts and sequences, was my biggest challenge because I love the story. I love the fucking story. Like it's a joy for me to recount this stuff. So, being brutal and not holding on to things that maybe, didn't propel the story, fast enough. That was really being objective was another challenge. But and working with a bunch of women, that's always tough.
I'm not going to touch that, man.
I'm
I'm
just
just not.
kidding. Listen, I'm kidding. I didn't mean that at all.
Hey, I'm divorced, so that tells you something.
Say
So
what? Yeah.
I said I'm divorced. That tells you something.
Hey,
So,
Billy's married 4 times, so there's a
whoa.
through in all of this. So
What was Tom Hanks's part in this?
Tom Hanks was an incredibly powerful name to attach to this project, and his relationship with HBO, his recommendation. Look, Susan Lacey was his choice, him and Gary Getzman's choice for me to consider. They wanted to be involved as executive producers to lend whatever hand they could in helping with, the behemoth that is HBO, politically, because they had a lot of power. And look, it's, he's a fan, so he wanted to be involved and basically help as much as he could. But I think the biggest involvement that Playtone had was they wanted to be involved, but they told me that they wouldn't be involved without Susan. So it was our decision internally, myself and Billy's and our sort of brain trust, to say, let's weigh this stuff. We have the greatest documentarian for artistry that exists. We have this behemoth that is Playtone and Tom Hanks. We have HBO that is a critically high bar, which is where we want it to be. We're not funding it. We're not producing it. They're putting up the money. So it was a great combination. The other people that were involved that were very important was Todd Milner and Sean Hayes. Kind of from left field, you say. I mean, Todd and Sean are comedy producers. Sean's a star, a big podcast star, obviously, and they're the ones that brought Playtone in. So I was very fortunate having relationships with these people, them coming to me and offering their assistance. So that was the involvement.
He seems to like to put his toes into the rock and roll waters a little bit from, that thing you do that he was in, and then playing the Colonel, which I didn't totally agree with his portrayal of the Colonel in that, but still being involved with the Elvis movie.
Listen, he's a music lover. He's a music
Yeah,
lover.
yeah.
He's a passionate music lover, and hey, look, politically, he's one of the most powerful men in Hollywood. So these things are hard enough to get made with top line talent. So I wanted to make sure Susan and Jessica wanted to make sure that they had the support, because this was not a cheap film to make, and
Yeah.
we didn't want to have to cut any corners in the production of it. So they were very helpful when it came to, there's just something when you're representing a Tom Hanks produced film that people just say yes. And when they say yes, that means they approve the payments and they get the money so that you can do what you need to do, because they know he only backs things that are of the highest quality. And Gary Getzman, who is his partner, was incredible and so incredibly helpful throughout the process from an editorial point of view. Like, we'd be working on something and we'd have a Zoom and he would point out something that none of us would see because he would see it from altitude, which is, I think I learned a great deal about the role of other executive producers on something like this. Because basically I'm an executive producer, but I'm a producer too, because
Hmm.
I had to roll up my sleeves and actually do some work. I shouldn't say they didn't do work, but different kind of stuff. So
Hmm.
the value there um, it's very important that you surround yourself with people that you trust, so that when you make a decision or you feel that you want to plant your flag and die on a particular hill, somebody will point out to you why that's not the hill you should die on and give you a really good reason.
Yeah.
Because these decisions are very personal.
For Billy, and I don't know if you can speak to this or not, or feel like I mean, you know him very well, but maybe this is something you don't feel comfortable judging. Was the documentary, was it more cathartic or was it more painful for him personally?
I don't, I don't, if I'm guessing, it was probably a little bit of equal parts of both. Um, I find him to be very grounded and very much a guy who lives in the moment and accepts. Look, he starts out the film by saying that the greatest thing he ever did was screw up. He wraps his and he wraps his world around, recovering from, the flawed things that we do because we're human. So I think that once he made the decision to let this happen, I don't think it could hurt him as much for me sitting on a couch next to him playing the film, just the two of us. I was, I was, I don't know if I don't want to be too obscene about it, but I was on pins and needles. Like, this is my friend. I don't know how he's going to react to certain things. So I was watching the screen and looking out of the corner of my eye and watching him lean into the thing. And after he watched it, he said, I take myself out of it. This is a really good movie. Like if you forget about me, he says, it's a really good movie. And then subsequently,
Yeah.
he wrote a note to Susan that he had learned some things about his life through the way she told that story that he had never looked at that way before. So
Wow.
I think it was cathartic. I think it was clarifying for him. And I also think at this point in his life, it's sort of a chapter that he needed to finish. Like
Yeah.
at 76, he's done everything. He's climbed the highest mountain. Um, he had a little bit of a hiccup with this health thing that sort of made him feel his mortality and realize that, it isn't all, you can't be the same person that you were 35 or 40 years ago. And he's
Yeah.
doing really well and he's taking care of himself and he's he's
Good.
he's getting better. But so I think there's an acceptance in him about all of this stuff that, like, okay, and I think him being ready to let everybody know the inner workings of how the craft is done is educational. He wanted to be a history teacher. Like that's
Hmm.
what he wanted to do. So I think there's a part of him that feels that this is a give back as well. I'm making this stuff up because I know him well enough, but I don't know him that well to know exactly what he's thinking about. But all signs say that it's a little bit of all of that.
Yeah. What were a couple of the biggest surprises that you experienced in putting this film together?
Nothing much surprised me, to be honest with you. I knew the
Oh, good.
stories really well. None of it really surprised me. I think the thing that surprised me is that putting all of these pieces together in a narrative and having the narrative be as entertaining as it is and as emotional as it is, I think that was the biggest surprise. I can't believe how many times I cried. Like, I mean, how many times I got choked up and how many times I got choked up after watching it over and over and over, like,
Yeah.
it's coming around the turn and it's coming. And at one point, Elizabeth gets choked up about the light coming through the window, and that this is what she hears, and I get choked up every time she does it. The Sean Small, Sean Weber at the end of part one says this. If Billy could show his emotions, we wouldn't have gotten these great songs. We might not have gotten these great songs. I mean, that chokes me up.
Hmm.
Him talking when he says, I realized walking on stage that there's still some gas left in the tank, got me every time. So I think that
Yeah.
was
One thing I wasn't aware of was how, and it was a very poignant scene, I feel, on the in the film. I can't remember if it was part one, part two, was when he was speaking out about what was, how the whole thing with Charlottesville was being portrayed. And I love the fact that he wore the yellow Star of David on his, on his breast and on his back. Um, and without saying a lot, he said a lot about all of that. And and maybe this is, I always try to stay non-political as best I can, but I'm curious with the events that's happened over the last couple of years with, with what happened in Gaza and the protests. And that's the main thing I'd be curious about is how have the Columbia protests and those kinds of things, has he said much about how that affects him? Because that's so, in my mind, very anti-Semitic, where a lot of Jewish students were prevented from going to class and that kind of thing. Has he, along the same line as the Charlottesville reaction, has he said much about that?
not really. I think, as he always says, um, it's not for him as a rock star to make a political statement, but he says it very clearly. He says in his heart, he'll always be a Jew. So
Hmm.
I'm that affects him as deeply as it affects me. I think that, in the world that we're living in now, where it's very difficult to ascertain what's real and what's not, you kind of have to stay above the fray. And I find that he does. Um, and I think, look, we as Jews know what anti-Semitism smells like, and we know what it looks like, and it's impossible to argue away. So, we're aware of it, and you're aware of it as a Jew in your bones.
Hmm.
So, you know, is it a call to action for him? I don't know, but I think, in this film, the story of his ancestry of being um, a Holocaust, in of being a survivor, of being from a family of survivors, and being able to be free and be an artist and be able to educate and entertain and make people happy. I think he feels it's he's getting his just desserts. You know what I mean? Like he's
Hmm.
doing what he needs to do. So in his heart of hearts, I couldn't tell you, but I know uh it takes a lot for a guy who is not political to walk on stage with a Jewish star, because there's so
Yep.
many people in that audience didn't know what the hell that meant. And I think that
And
they
that's sad.
I think that's the reason that he did it more than anything else, is to point out that, this has happened before, and we've seen this
Hmm.
happen before, and this is what this looks like. So, I'd be curious. I'd be curious to have a further conversation about it, but
Yeah.
you know, it's not our day-to-day dialogue.
Right. Right. What wound up on the cutting room floor that you wish hadn't? Anything?
Yeah, there was quite a few little bits that I miss. And I think what I miss most is these interviews with the guys like Mellencamp and Henley and McCartney. They all said so much more. Springsteen, they said so much more about Billy. Um, they were effusive in their praise. They were funny. You just couldn't get it all in there. So I think I miss some of that stuff. And I also miss, there's a few times Billy did some interviews where he really did a deep dive in constructing some of the songs, that it just got too inside. It just got too long. So I missed some of that. I mean, at one point, it was a three-part film. And
Really?
yeah, at one point it was three episodes, and it just fell under its own weight.
Yeah.
It stopped moving. And like I said, you get really attached to stuff, and you need other people to say, give you that litmus of questions. Is it moving the story forward? Is it telling you something that you don't know? Is it restating something that you've heard 3 or 4 times? And you have to put this filter through all of those decisions. And if it doesn't pass it doesn't click all those boxes, it gets cut out. So,
Well, as a fan, and I put myself probably solidly in the middle where, there's probably the rabid fans that, know Billy's underwear size, and then there's those people that are just passive listeners. I feel like I'm probably somewhere there in the middle. And for me, and I'm not saying this to patronize you, Steve, but for me, when it got when I was done watching it, there was two things. One, I wish there was more for me to watch, and two, I wish I had had it on DVD so I could kind of like more easily skip back or go back and rewatch whole things in my own time and not worry about the links expiring and all that kind of thing. But
the good
the
news
way
is,
you guys,
the good news is it's streaming. Once it drops on HBO, you can do exactly that. You can watch it as many times as you want. You can pause it and go to the bathroom
yeah.
and food and be able to run things back as much as you want.
Well,
So
but is it going to come out on DVD after all that?
I don't know if there's if they put out hard product anymore. I really don't know. I just know that it'll be up on HBO and it'll be up on Max forever. Once it goes up there, they don't take them down unless,
Oh, okay.
so it will be up there for you to watch as many times as you want, as long as you have a subscription for it. So,
Well, I think if you were to do it on DVD, I mean, I get DVDs all the time from the people that are still putting them out. It used to be Universal, and then I forget the name of the company now. But boy, to have that on DVD and all the stuff you were saying that were taken out, cut out, be grayed out.
oh,
Just a whole.
I think once, I'm not knowing how the structure of the HBO world is as intimately as some. I don't know what the window is for all of that stuff, but certainly there will be a desire for whether it be a director's cut or whether it will be added bonus features or things that weren't in the original film. There's always a hunger for all of that stuff. So
Yeah.
I can't tell you that I don't think that will happen. I just don't think it'll happen, right away. I think
Right.
film
Right.
itself, the film itself has to be out there for a year or so, and everybody has to
Agreed.
digest in the manner that HBO is delivering it. So,
Maybe if it comes out in DVD, we'll come and there's a lot of, bonus features
additional
on there.
stuff.
Let's have another talk about it and we can
But
talk about those things. What's next for you? I've heard stuff's being said that you've got several projects in the hopper and what you got going on that maybe we can talk about in the future.
Well, I have a scripted show that I've been developing for about 6 years with Amazon and MGM. It's a Billy Joel project actually, but it's a very, very different project. It's a scripted young adult drama that takes place in Montauk, New York. That is where the Billy Joel soundtrack, where the Billy Joel world and characters become interwoven into a storyline. And
Oh, cool.
it's written by a gentleman named David Weil, who did Hunters for Amazon, did uh, um, Invasion for Apple. He just finished the Russo Brothers series, and he's a guy from Valley Stream, New York, and we've been working pretty closely for about 3 years on it. And hopefully an announcement comes pretty soon that we got a network who's going to put it on the air. So that's happening. There's another Billy Joel project that's interesting, which is it's a docu-series breaking down the song "We Didn't Start the Fire" for the History Channel, where we're taking every verse from "We Didn't Start the Fire" and doing a deep dive on each one of the characters.
How
And
fun.
that's going to be a fun thing. It's 40 years, so it'll be 40 episodes. And then I've got a couple of other non-Billy Joel projects. Being involved in the television production part of this world with Billy has opened up a lot of opportunities for me to develop other things. And as much as I love to do things that are non-Billy centric, I keep getting drawn back to the mothership because he likes to see us do these things. There's also a lot of archive stuff. I discovered in the archive search, um, I shot a show in 1981 for some music videos in black and white for an album that came out called Songs in the Attic.
Hmm.
That long since, lost to history, we went through and found cans and cans of 16 mm film negative that had never been processed. Well, it turns out I shot
Wow.
the entire show. I don't remember shooting the entire show. I remember we were doing some pickups the second day, but as it turns out, we recorded the whole thing, we mixed it. The performance is unbelievable, and now we're just cutting that together. So I think that'll be the next Billy Joel visual product that comes out. I'm hoping to cut it together for theatrical, so that'll be a fun thing to watch. It's really fun to watch Billy and that original band perform. We shot this, and a week later he went into the studio and started recording the Nylon Curtain. So it's just at the end of the Glass Houses explosion.
Wow.
Well, it's great. I mean, you see these guys, they're kids, and Billy's this little arrogant guy, and it's a club show. There were 100 people, so it's
Oh, wow.
it's a pretty great thing. So I'm working on that, and yeah, I mean, got a couple of books that I've optioned for development. So who knows? Look, I just turned 71 on Sunday, and I'm happier than I've ever been doing this stuff at the pace I want to do it. I have incredible support from Bill. I think this film is going to be very important tent
Agreed.
in my career, and I got to keep moving forward, because if I
Oh,
don't,
cool.
I don't want I don't want to sit around like it's not fun. Like I've been doing this since I'm 20 years old. Like why stop now? It doesn't make any sense.
You're just getting warmed up, right?
Well, it's a little bit of my second act too. I was a rock and roll lighting guy for 45 years. So, still am. So, and I still get a call now and again to design a live show. So I still have that part of my career. So yeah, hopefully we'll be able to talk about the next things, because I like doing this stuff and I like talking about the work.
Well, man, I would love to talk to you with each one of these projects as you roll them out, because you're fun to talk to. We get deep in the weeds on some things, and I feel like we just haven't even really scratched the surface on this whole thing. But I would love to, cover this more. So my door is always open to you on any of these projects, and I'm going to rush this. Normally, I only post on Wednesdays, but with the part one coming out on Friday, I want to see if I can get this thing done by tomorrow night. I'll send the links to Samantha, and then let's stay in touch and talk as you got stuff rolling out.
Fantastic. It was great talking to you. And yeah, I think we covered some good stuff. So I look forward to hearing it, and let's stay in touch. Thank you very much.
And please tell Billy there's this hillbilly in the Smoky Mountains way down south that's a huge fan of his, and that I love the documentary.
Fantastic. I will tell him for sure.
All right. Thanks a lot, Steve.
I'm sure he'll watch this. I'll send him the link once you publish it, because he eats all this stuff up. He loves it.
All right. Well, look for it in the next couple days.
Thank you.
All right. Take care, Steve. Bye-bye.